Speaker. On June the 5th, 1989, my little world blacked over and nothing was to be the same again. My 8-year-old son Martin, a bright, beautiful and wonderful little boy, stepped out onto the road and was tragically knocked down. Much of what happened over the following weeks was, and still is, a blur. The pain is so acute and the sensation of this is incomprehensible, and the tragedy seems almost surreal. At times I felt I was floating above the room where all this grief was dwelling, and I was not really part of it. I was not part of what was going on. It was a dream, I wished. Mostly I felt my life was a bank holiday when shops shut and mail wasn't delivered and the milkman didn't come. So seeing people outside of my own little world going about their normal everyday business just didn't seem right. I asked myself, didn't they know that the world had come to an end? I always felt that my brain and my senses were full of cotton wool or clouds, and nothing I saw or I sensed or I heard or experienced resonated. It didn't hit a hard surface, nothing registered, they just floated around in my head. I have a vague recollection of chatting with my vicar and the undertaker about the kind of service I wanted, and I may well have been given prices at that time, but considering I needed to be told to wash and eat and sleep, it certainly didn't register in my brain. I understand retrospectively that a cremation would have been cheaper than a burial, but I had to bury my son. At the time I was making a decision on the funeral, I was actually deciding on whether to join my son on the other side or not, or to stay for Stuart, my then 3-year-old, who really needed his mum. I calculated, and I used that word deliberately because I actually sat in the bath and I assessed which of my 2 children needed me the most. And I eventually reasoned that Stuart, who was only 3, he couldn't lose his mum and his brother all in one go. So, my much-loved grandparents were buried together in Morriston Cemetery in my constituency now, and I felt that putting Martin in the grave with them meant that my nana, who loved him dearly, was there to look after him until I could be with him again. So I had to bury my little boy. At least that gave me some peace of mind. And later in life, I went on to have another child, Thomas, who's now 15, and Stuart, my 3-year-old, is now 31, and him and his wife have given me a wonderful grandson, Liam. So I made the right decision in not joining Martin and to stay with Stuart. But mothers will understand the position that I was in, because I think we all live for our children. To lose one, you have to decide who needs you the most. And we all want to give our children the skills to help them build good lives. We want to give our children the latest toy, the latest gadget. We want to give them the best of everything. As young parents, we save for Christmas and birthdays to allow us to do that. But when you lose a child, the only thing you can give them is a funeral and a grave. I'm told that my son had a wonderful funeral. I can't remember much about it because my world was black and nothing had resonated in my mind. I couldn't function, as I've said. I couldn't do simple chores like washing my hair or cooking a meal. When the undertaker was explaining to me what the plans for my little boy's funeral were, I just wanted to hold my little boy, not bury him. But I remember the day the bill arrived and that fear in my stomach as to how I would pay for it. My husband David and I both come from a community who reacted to loss in the only way they knew how. They had a whip round, they had a collection. And out of the blue, 2 of David's mates, and I can see them now standing at my front door, not knowing whether to come in or to run away. And they turned up with an envelope of money. And thank God for my community and thank God for my friends, because that collection was enough to cover 3/4 of the funeral cost. And the following day, my husband went to his bank and asked them for the other £750, and they said yes. So I had the money for the funeral. Now, I've chosen to share my story at this time because I'm in a position to be the voice of bereaved parents. Approximately 5,000 babies and children will pass away each year in this country, and it's not something any parent can or could be prepared for. No one expects to bury their children. It's in the complete wrong order. So when that tragedy happens, parents will be totally unprepared, both emotionally and financially. And since I first spoke out about this issue, I've received support from colleagues across the House. I've received emails and calls and letters from other parents who are in a similar position to me. A member of the House staff stopped me to say that he and his wife lost an 18-month-old baby, and his local authority charged him for an adult funeral, and he had to battle that local authority to get the cost reduced. Another gentleman wrote that he'd lost 2 children, a 1-year-old and a 17-year-old. And this man tells me he was ashamed to ask for help to cover the funeral costs because he'd wanted to give that to his children. Today I learned of a couple who had a very premature baby who passed away after 4 weeks in special care. But when the parents weighed up the cost of a funeral, they just couldn't afford it. So they had to leave the baby for the NHS to deal with. And that's not uncommon. I've had a teacher tell me that when they lost a pupil in her school, they held a non-school uniform day to help parents pay for the funeral. And just tonight, Click Sargent, the cancer charity, have contacted me regarding a survey they've undertaken in connection with issues that most concern the parents of children with cancer. And many say that paying for the funeral is a very big worry. They've told me of one family whose little boy's football club undertook fundraising to help them cover the cost of a funeral. Across local authority, fees for children's funerals vary greatly. But on a more compassionate note, I've heard from a mum who lost a very, very premature twin babies. And Rhondda Cynon Taf, an authority in Wales, not just covered the local authority fees, they absorbed the total cost of the funeral. So to Rhondda Cynon Taf, authorities who currently do not charge, or those who are planning to scrap fees, I say from the very bottom of my heart, thank you. It's a very small amount of money that I'm asking the government to put in. It's £10 million. The fees for children's funerals could be covered right across this country for £10 million. It's an easy and it's a small ask, but it would have impact greatly on the cost of a funeral, and in no small way give comfort to bereaved parents. The Prime Minister at a recent PMQ suggested the social fund could be used to help. But I say to the Prime Minister, at the darkest moment of a parent's life, I couldn't even fill a kettle, let alone fill in a 35-page application form. And I've subsequently written to the Prime Minister asking that she consider my request, but as of yet I've not received a reply. So I will conclude by saying to the Minister, please do this, make this happen. It's the right thing to do, it's the respectful thing to do, and it's the compassionate thing to do.